Right now, as you're watching this video, something unprecedented is happening. Indonesia just unveiled a massive increase in defense spending for 2026, while the Philippines approved a multi-year $35 billion modernization program. Japan, a nation that constitutionally renounced war after World War II, is barreling forward with efforts to significantly boost its military capabilities, doubling annual arms spending. South Korea, Australia, Taiwan, they're all doing the same thing. But here's what the media isn't telling you. This isn't about preparing for war in general. This is about preparing for one specific region, one specific flashpoint, one specific potential conflict that could reshape the entire global order. The global military machine isn't pivoting toward multiple threats. It's laser-focused on Asia, and more specifically the Indo-Pacific region, where China expects to be able to fight and win a war on Taiwan by the end of 2027. What you're about to discover will change how you see global politics forever. Because while everyone's distracted by headlines, the biggest military transformation since World War II is happening right under our noses. And it all centers on one question: what happens when the world's largest economies collide in the Pacific? Point 1. The 2027 deadline, China's unstoppable timeline. Let's start with the elephant in the room. Why 2027? This isn't some random date pulled from thin air. The Pentagon's 2025 China Military Power Report provides the clearest account to date of Xi Jinping's goal of achieving by the end of 2027 the capabilities required to prevail in a Taiwan conflict. This is called the Centennial Military Building Goal, and it's tied to the 100th anniversary of the People's Liberation Army. But what does this actually mean? China's announced defense budget has nearly doubled since the first full year of Xi Jinping's term as General Secretary. The People's Liberation Army has been testing essential components of potential operations against Taiwan, including exercises designed to strike sea and land targets, challenge U.S. forces in the Pacific, and block access to key ports. The scale is staggering. Taiwan's National Security Bureau noted in December that 2025 saw a record 3,570 Chinese military aircraft incursions into Taiwan's surrounding airspace. That's not a typo. 3,570 incursions in a single year. China capped off 2025 with what it described as its largest Taiwan-focused military exercises to date, launching expansive drills in December that included live fire elements and simulated island encirclement operations, according to Fox News. What's particularly concerning is that the repeated omission of peaceful unification language in high-profile statements in 2024 and 2025, combined with China's substantial military operations around Taiwan, indicate that Beijing is seeking to compel Taipei's unification through a concerted pressure campaign, rather than only deterring independence. The pressure isn't theoretical anymore. It's constant, measurable, and escalating. Point 2. The Island Chain Strategy, Geography as Destiny. Now, let me show you why geography determines everything in this conflict. Military strategists talk about something called the first island chain and the second island chain. These aren't just lines on a map. They're the difference between China being a regional power and a global superpower. The first island chain runs from Japan through Taiwan and the Philippines down to Borneo. It's essentially a natural barrier that, if controlled by U.S. allies, keeps China's navy bottled up in its coastal waters. The second island chain extends from Japan through Guam to Indonesia. Panelists examined how the Army's presence across the first and second island chains supports deterrence by denying adversary access and reinforcing partner confidence. This is why Taiwan isn't just about Taiwan. Control of Taiwan would blow a massive hole in the first island chain, giving China direct access to the Pacific Ocean and threatening U.S. military bases across the region. PLA strikes could potentially range up to 1,500 to 2,000 nautical miles from China, and in sufficient volume, these strikes could seriously challenge and disrupt U.S. presence in the region. The U.S. military understands this completely. The United States and its allies are forging a tighter defensive coalition, coordinating plans for worst-case scenarios like a Taiwan war, practicing large-scale joint operations through exercises such as Reefer Pack, and expanding security assistance to vulnerable states from East Asia to the Pacific Islands. U.S. military exercises in Southeast Asia in the first half of 2025 have shown a shift in strategy, with tactical combat assets like HIMARS missiles and Typhoon systems being deployed more densely in recent exercises. This geographic reality explains why every nation along these island chains is suddenly upgrading their militaries. They're the front line. Point 3. The South China Sea powder keg. While everyone focuses on Taiwan, there's another flashpoint that could trigger conflict at any moment, the South China Sea. And it's getting dangerously hot. China's Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels have interfered with Philippine boats, with notable incidents including China targeting a Philippine Coast Guard boat with a military-grade laser and using water cannons against, surrounding, and colliding with Philippine vessels. But it gets worse. In June 2024, clashes near Second Thomas Shoal involved militiamen wielding axes and spears, causing serious injury to a Philippine sailor. This isn't just random aggression, it's a calculated strategy. China's Coast Guard, Navy, and maritime militia have intensified a campaign of aggression against the Philippines, ramming, blocking, and using water cannons to harass military patrols, fishing vessels, and humanitarian missions operating lawfully in Manila's exclusive economic zone. The international response? Unprecedented military cooperation. The U.S. and the Philippines announced a joint task force to deter Beijing's coercion in the South China Sea, which is the first of its kind in Southeast Asia. The United States Congress has approved $2.5 billion in new security assistance for the Philippines, authorizing up to $500 million a year in foreign military financing grants from fiscal years 2026 through 2030. Japan, Australia, Canada, and even New Zealand are conducting joint patrols in these waters. The Philippines and Canada signed a defense pact to expand joint military drills and deepen security cooperation. Every week brings new military exercises, new confrontations, new near misses that could spiral into something much larger. Point 4. Japan's stunning military reversal. Here's something that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. Japan is becoming a military powerhouse again, and I'm not exaggerating. Japan is barreling forward with efforts to significantly boost its military capabilities to stand up to China's growing threats by doubling annual arms spending. Remember, this is a country that has had a pacifist constitution since 1945. Under Article 9 of the U.S. drafted 1947 Constitution, Japan renounced the use of force to settle international disputes and the right to maintain land, sea, and air forces for that purpose. But everything changed in December 2022. Former Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's government adopted a security strategy stating the need for Japan to acquire strike-back capability with long-range missiles, a major break from Japan's self-defense-only policy. One former official described this as the death of Article 9. The new prime minister has gone even further. Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi made a statement soon after taking office that any Chinese military action against Taiwan could be grounds for a Japanese military response. This is massive. Japan is publicly declaring it would potentially fight China over Taiwan. The practical implications? Japan is now selling military equipment to the Philippines and Vietnam. Japanese forces are conducting joint exercises throughout the region. With a birth rate of 0.78, well below the average 2.1 replacement rate, South Korea's military manpower could shrink to nearly half its current size within the next 2 decades, and yet they're still investing heavily in defense. The demographic crisis makes these military buildups even more remarkable. They're happening despite shrinking populations that make them increasingly difficult to sustain. Point 5. Taiwan's $40 billion gamble and political gridlock. Taiwan itself faces a critical paradox. Everyone agrees it needs to prepare for potential Chinese invasion, but domestic politics are paralyzing its defense buildup. Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te announced plans for a historic $40 billion supplementary defense budget, saying that China's unprecedented military buildup required it to join U.S. allies and partners in the Asia-Pacific in spending more to deter Chinese aggression. If approved, the plan would raise defense spending to 5% of GDP by 2030. But here's the problem. The opposition parties that control the legislature have repeatedly voted to block Lai's proposed special defense budget. The main opposition party, the KMT, has echoed CCP talking points, framing the spending as provocative. This isn't just political disagreement, it's potentially existential for Taiwan's survival. The United States is watching nervously. Washington recently finalized an $11 billion arms package for Taiwan, but other KMT lawmakers have emphasized delays in U.S. deliveries of purchased military equipment to Taiwan to question further spending on U.S. weaponry. There's a real concern that delays in U.S. equipment deliveries could undermine Taiwan's readiness. Meanwhile, Lai said the military aimed to have a high level of joint combat readiness against China by 2027, the same year China is targeting for capability achievement. It's a race against time, and Taiwan's own political divisions might be its greatest vulnerability. If this budget doesn't pass, it sends a very dangerous message to security partners like the U.S. The question isn't whether Taiwan can defend itself militarily, it's whether Taiwan can politically unite enough to try. Point 6. The global economic stakes. Why this affects everyone. Let me tell you why you should care about this, even if you've never thought about Asian geopolitics before. Semiconductors. Taiwan produces over 60% of the world's semiconductors and over 90% of the most advanced chips. If conflict disrupts Taiwan, it doesn't just affect Asia, it shuts down the global economy. Your smartphone, your car, your computer, medical devices, military systems, they all depend on Taiwanese chips. A conflict over Taiwan would make COVID-19 supply chain crisis look like a minor inconvenience. We're talking about a complete halt to production of advanced electronics worldwide. But it goes beyond chips. The South China Sea's estimated 11 billion barrels of untapped oil and 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas have antagonized competing claimants. More importantly, over $3 trillion in annual global commerce flows through these waters. About 1/3 of global shipping passes through the South China Sea. A conflict here would disrupt global trade on a scale we've never seen in the modern era. This is why the active involvement of non-Pacific actors like the UK underscores that managing China's rise is now a global priority, not just a regional one. European nations are sending warships to the Indo-Pacific. NATO is discussing Asia for the first time seriously. The world is recognizing that what happens in the Taiwan Strait and South China Sea will determine economic prosperity globally for decades to come. The interconnected global economy means that a regional conflict in Asia would immediately become a global crisis. And that's why everyone is preparing, because the economic stakes are simply too high to ignore. So here's what's really happening. The world isn't preparing for war in some abstract sense. It's preparing specifically for potential conflict in the Indo-Pacific, centered on Taiwan and the South China Sea, with a critical timeline converging on 2027. Every major power is making their moves right now. China is building capabilities at unprecedented speed. The United States is restructuring its entire military posture around the Pacific. Japan is abandoning 80 years of pacifism. Southeast Asian nations are choosing sides and modernizing their forces. Taiwan is racing to build defenses while fighting political gridlock. The question isn't whether this matters. It absolutely does, both strategically and economically. The question is whether all this military preparation will successfully deter conflict, or whether we're watching the buildup to the first great power war of the 21st century. What do you think? Is deterrence working, or are we sleepwalking into catastrophe? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this video opened your eyes to what's really happening in global geopolitics, hit that subscribe button. This is the kind of analysis you won't get from mainstream news. I break down complex geopolitical situations every week so you can understand what's really going on in the world. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.